a few questions and answers. May I start? Yes, thank you. I think two very important things to affect change. One is information, the free flow of information that we've seen in the Ford example. We will have much more information than before that will change things very, very quickly. And the other point is it's not that important what I'm saying. And the other point is education. I strongly believe educating children, adolescents, high schoolers, 82-year-olds, so it doesn't stop from here to there. It's really the two most important things that can really affect change. Could you give us an example of an educational system, education idea that really has changed a lot of people or has an important impact? Coming from your field, which is definitely that. Can be small or big or whatever. So that has a very important impact in terms of education and affecting people after that.
I can do that. First, I'd like to mention that the United Nations Environment Program and UNESCO have now published something which is called Here and Now Education for Sustainable Consumption, which is both a set of policy guidelines and recommendations for a core curriculum for education for sustainable consumption. And that's pretty neat because it starts out by looking at your values. It starts out by saying, what is the purpose of life and why are we here? It encourages the teacher to go from there all the way to future scenarios. But in line with that, there are a lot of very exciting initiatives. And one of them I mentioned yesterday in the workshop. I'll re-mention it here to those who weren't with us there. It's called LOLA, Looking for Likely Alternatives. I'm afraid it's a lot more surprise. But it involves acknowledging, identifying initiatives of social innovation. It means going out in your community with your class, which we don't do very often because, it's much easier to stay in the classroom. You take the kids out and you identify initiatives of sustainable lifestyle. You document them. You evaluate them. You put them up on the blog. You put them on the internet. You exchange information about this. And by magnifying or bringing them up in line, you also provide an opportunity for other people to be informed about them and think, hey, maybe I can do that. And the kids who do this, or the older people, if it's lifelong learning, they have an experience of meeting people face to face and being inspired by them, which is a lot better than reading it in a book or seeing it in the news. That's just one example.
Question for you and one for Arthur when he follows up. I had a colleague, friend I haven't seen for a while, Frank Dixon, who worked at Invest in New York and they did social screening for investment funds. And he realized after a bit of time that the governance and the regulatory environment created a ceiling of about 30% of improvement that could be made in sustainability in terms of social reforms and so forth. What we seem to have at the moment, and I'll speak for my own country, the United States, is we have a failure in governance. And this is actually a worldwide phenomenon, it seems. And we, as Baha'is, are not supposed to become politically aligned or so forth, but we do have a political problem. And that political problem is manifesting itself in vast failures in governance in many countries around the world. So I don't know what we do about that. I mean, all of the initiatives and things that you talk about and we talk about in this conference are all wonderful, and I'm sure they all have an impact. But unless the governance of our world changes, how is that really going to be that effective?
I'm not sure how much I can, if that was a question or just a comment, but I would like to say one. It was both. I'll make one comment on that. Without going into the problem of American politics, which is a challenging one, I would emphasize, Abdu'l-Baha has written several places that we are encouraged to vote, we are encouraged to participate in the process of changing how society is run. We are not supposed to participate in partisan politics, in political parties. This not a big hop from getting your local legislatures to realize that you as a member of their constituency want changes and in this kind of change in a certain direction. And I think that the Hive and civil society organizations like EBBF or IEF also play an important role. I mean, IEF has been at a number of international conferences, making their voices heard. The international community is very much heard and acknowledged and noticed. Their documents are read and taken to heart in many situations. But maybe we need to find new ways of doing it. Maybe this is the challenge that the High community hasn't really grappled with yet. How can we really make an effect? The other thing is, I think the Hives are becoming more and more active in government. I think if you look around, there are quite a number of people here who actually are employed by the government on a sort of national level, and they're able to influence without being politicians how governance is done. But I agree, it's an enormous challenge that needs to be acknowledged and looked at and worked on.
You have been mentioning the different actors in sustainable development, the government, the individual, and the companies and others, civil society. And so of course they are all important in this process. But I still think that the consumers don't have enough power yet because they're not well, the individual still feel very powerless because basically even if we have choice when we buy products, we still don't have enough information about really what is the value of this product in terms of value, its impact on the environment, its impact on social aspects in the world, and so who are all the actors are important, of course, but which one can take the lead? And I believe the business world can do much more than what they're doing now, and how can we push that? And what would be your suggestion?
I agree with you completely there. I think one of the important areas that business should look closer at is this question of defining your sphere of influence. You know, as was mentioned earlier, before it's been traditional to look at it very closely. Again, I've been rather impressed by this visit I had in Japan because I was talking with a lot of the big company CEOs and with the Prime Minister. We were sitting at the table, and the CEOs of some of the big Japanese companies were saying, look, our problem is we have a tradition of providing for our employees' children, our employees' grandparents, our employees' cousins. You know, we've given them hospitals, we've given them pensions, and we can't do it anymore, or otherwise we're not competitive. They have to find a way to deal with this, but their sphere of influence has been defined as being very wide in the past, whereas companies in other parts of the world have been very small. And somehow the disconnect between who has responsibility for whom needs to be fixed. You know, in countries where governments have had responsibility and are now giving it over to the private businesses and vice versa. So I think one thing is to have a redefinition of spheres of influence. And then I think also, as you were saying, the communication, the information to the consumer, it has to be improved. You know, we have to be able to understand all the thousands of E's on the product or on a chocolate bar when we buy it, or we have to understand what labeling really means and be able to rely upon it. We need to be able to know if an ethical company is really truly ethical and what that means. And that's a process. A lot is happening. It's moving forward. We don't teach this in school, not very much, and it has to come there, it has to come in the homes, it has to come everywhere. So I think that also this developing a clear information transmission is going to be an essential part of it. The businesses have a responsibility there too.
Thank you very much indeed. And the reason why we're stopping now, it is noon, I believe. No, it's just a brief interruption. And Alain, do you have to say something about what happens today at noon?